everyone, and welcome to A2I Dyslexia, All Things Dyslexia live show. I'm ever so sorry, we're 10 minutes late today. We were having a little bit of technical hitch, and we were trying to solve all that problem. Now, we all know what it's like to have a live show. Anything can go wrong. And there were a few technical hitches, shall I say. So take a deep breath and welcome everyone to our live show. Today we're talking about dyslexia, and I'm sorry, my computer keeps going off. We're talking about dyslexia and substance abuse, a topic that is very close to my heart because somebody emailed me and said, look, why is it dyslexia and substance abuse? And I said that there is a link between dyslexia and obviously someone who is maybe trying to engage with workplace or education or whatever it might be. And if they're not able to kind of do these things, sometimes it can result to, all sorts of different things that can happen. So we have the amazing Bianca Simpson, who works for an amazing organization. She will introduce herself in a minute to tell us about what she does and why I think it's really important that we speak about things like i.e. substance abuse and so forth. Now, just a bit of a warning, some of the things that may be shared here, it's not really for children. So if you've got any child watching, I'd strongly advise that maybe you don't get them to watch this program, because things might be said relating to things like alcohol and substance abuse and so forth. So we did put that in our email that there are sensitive topic. It is a sensitive topic, and there may be things that people might find it a little bit, if you need help or support after, of course, we can point you to the right place. So my name is Elizabeth Techi. I'm the founder of A2I Dyslexia. Welcome to our live show. I must apologize for a little bit of the delay. As you can see, I feel a bit flabbergasted and the camera is so close, but there's nothing I can do about that at the moment. I'm trying to kind of zoom in and out, but it's not really working at the moment. But I'd like to welcome the amazing Bianca Simpson, who is going to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about what she does and some of the work she's actually done with people who've got dyslexia and of course, how it resulted to substance abuse for some people. So welcome to our A2I Dyslexia live show, Bianca.
Hi.
Hello there. I did try to pronounce the name of your organization, but it's a bit of a mouthful for me. So I thought I'll leave you to say the name of the organization for me. And also, just before we start, I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of an introduction to our listeners and viewers about a little bit of a background about you. So Bianca Simpson has over 20 years experience in the field of mental health with a passion for CBT, that's cognitive behavior therapy, motivational interviewing. And what is SBFT, Bianca? What's
SBFT? Brief solution focused therapy. So solution-based brief therapy intervention. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So she is the subject matter expert in alcohol and substance use, delivering training, workshops, and counselling. Bianca's passionate about employee engagement and peer support advocacy to change organizational structure. I think it's really important that we speak about these things because, the understanding around dyslexia has always been about, oh, I can't read or spell or focus on things. But there are some sort of linkage, I think, when you've got a sort of specific learning difficulty and you can't do it. And, I'm going to leave you to talk to us about the expert side of things and why you think there might be some linkage to people with dyslexia who may use substance to kind of get out of their situation or whatever they might be in. So I'm heading over to you now, Bianca. Tell us a little bit about yourself, the company you work for, and why you're passionate to talk about this topic.
Well, hi everybody. My name is Bianca Simpson, and I'm currently working with a marvelous company called Benevolent Health. And there are a range of people like myself that bring areas of expertise in a different and wide-ranging variety of issues that affect mental health. And my area of expertise is around substance misuse, addiction therapies, and interventions. But that is a massive part of someone's mental health. So even in just engaging in that as a career, I'm constantly supporting people with their mental health, because you know, I started my background in, I've done lots of things, but I had quite a long spanning career in events, promotions, parties and that kind of thing. And it was during that time in my life that I really witnessed firsthand, myself, peers, the damage, even though it was a recreational environment that we were in, the prevalence and the damage that substances can do and bring. You know, I've seen from that perspective, and at some point, you know, I guess having children, I stepped away from that, but the things that I had seen stayed with me, and I've always felt good about being of service, helping others. It was something that I did. I was always the agony aunt of my peer circle. So it made sense for me to train and go into a field where I could share that passion and that skill, really. So I guess that's what led me into the field. And to be honest, I started off as a service user coordinator, and I was very big on peer support and service user engagement and service user involvement. As my career progressed, that became focused on employee engagement in very much the same way that I focused on peer engagement. And that was really useful because that helped me to start informing and changing cultural norms within organisations, and my organisation in particular. So I guess the first question is, what is substance use, substance abuse, substance misuse, addiction?
Just before we go on to that, Bianca, I just wanted to say, just before we go on to the first question, I just wanted our viewers to know that Bianca works for the company, which I can't pronounce the name. Bianca's not dyslexic. Yeah.
No.
She's not dyslexic, just to let people, the viewers, our listeners and viewers know that. She works for this organization, and her expertise is, you know, she has worked with people with mental health as well as people who deal with substance abuse. And Bianca and I gave a talk about last year sometime at Simongos, and she really blew me away with some of the stuff that, you know, she spoke about, and how there is a connection. So I wanted the listeners and viewers to know.
If you don't mind, I'd like to touch on some of that today as well, actually, because I do think it's relevant for today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to our first question. And what is substance abuse, Bianca? Here we go.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? So what I've done is I've pulled up a couple of different definitions. So if you look at a standard definition, substance misuse means the use of any psychoactive or mood-altering substance without compelling medical reason in a manner that results in mental, emotional, physical or physical impairment and causes socially dysfunctional or socially disorderly behaviour, and that results in psychological dependence or physiological addiction as a function of continued use. Substance misuse has the same meaning as drug abuse or abuse of drugs. So that's one definition. The medical definition is the excessive use of a substance, especially alcohol or a drug, and substance abuse that is frequently, sorry, I just lost my train of thought on the line that I was reading there, sorry. So a maladaptive pattern of substance use leading to clinically significant impairment or distress is manifested by one or more of the following occurring within a 12-month period. So recurrent substance use resulting in failure to fulfill major role obligations at work, at school, at home, so repeated absences or work performance related to substance use and substance related absences, suspensions or expulsions from school, neglect of your children or your household. So that's number one. Number two would be recurrent substance use in situations in which it is physically hazardous, so driving, operating machinery, when impaired by substance use. Number three is a recurrent substance-related legal problem, so, you know, getting arrested, disorderly conduct and that type of thing. And number four is continued substance use despite having persistent or recurrent social or interpersonal problems caused or exacerbated by the effects of substance use, e.g. arguments with your spouse, consequences of intoxications, accidents, fights, whatever. Now, you know, I read that, and I know this, you know, but it was a long time ago since I had to really think about the definitions of it. But I read this today, and it just left me with a question, really. What is missing? What's missing from that definition? So, like, if you had to answer that question, Elizabeth, and I'm throwing you a curveball here because you probably wasn't expecting this, but listening to that, what would you say? What would you say is missing?
Sorry, you might have to repeat that again, Bianca. My attention span was like 3 seconds is gone. So what would I?
That's okay. So I was just wondering if, you know, after hearing that, what would you say is missing from that definition?
Right. I must admit, if I have to be honest with you, the definition, as you were reading, I was trying to catch up with it, and that's just part of my dyslexia. And I was like, oh, I'm really trying to catch up with what you were saying there. I must admit, didn't get all of it, but if you can make it sort of shorten it for me, then I might be able to answer that for you. Yeah, if you can sort of not the longer definition.
It's a rhetorical question. I'll try to stitch you up, honestly, Elizabeth. It's kind of a rhetorical question in a way, but for me, what stood out is when they're talking about the definition of substance abuse, they're not talking at all about anything to do with the mental or emotional or social issues that lead someone to abuse. And when you speak to someone that's dealing with it, they're not thinking about the definitions that are described in a technical way. They're thinking about, you know, the comforting. So like the comforters. So from a young age, perhaps, you know, they've needed comfort in some way. And they may have started to drink or use soft drugs like cannabis as a means to perhaps attain social inclusion, identity, especially at a younger age, you know. And often we talk about these drugs being the gateway drugs. So the socially acceptable drinker, you know, everyone's kind of cool smoking spliffs, you know, it's like not seen as a problematic substance, okay? But we often define these as gateway drugs. And more often than not, especially if someone's going to be predisposed to having issues with substances, particularly because they're using them already as a comfort, they'll tend to go on to hard drugs and as a progression. So for me, this is what the substance abuse is about. It can start off as a recreational, quite a manageable, perhaps just for use, but at some point, depending on the motivation for the use, and the rewards that are being gained from the use, then it can become something to give you control. If you're struggling in life, and especially somebody who has some kind of barrier to life, so whether it be a mental illness, a physical illness, an emotional barrier, they will tend to draw towards substances that are going to give them the ability to manage those scenarios. I found a lot of people who have issues with crippling self-esteem or confidence will take cocaine or other types of stimulant drugs like amphetamines, ecstasy, because it allows them to feel they have some sort of control, some sort of dominance. You know, and the need for this in order to cope and associate and experience in life in a way that they feel they can manage. Sadly, you know, and I guess the most challenging type of substance abuse would be the type where you just want to block and forget everything and numb and escape, and more times than not, that's going to lead you to some type of opiate addiction. So that could be prescription drugs, that could be opiates in terms of heroin, methadone, and that kind of thing, because it allows you to just be blanketed in a shield of numbness, you know, where it just, nothing matters, nothing can touch you. So for me, substance abuse isn't one definition.
Yeah,
And
of course.
most people know how to abuse substances. It's just where they end up. And I don't think the textbook definition gives you that snapshot or that insight.
Right. Thank you so much for that. So where's the link? So where is the link between dyslexia and substance abuse? Where's the link?
So, for example, talking about the sort of the confidence, the blockers, then the social inclusion and the identity that you get, control, the dominance, all of these things, you know, being able to escape, to numb yourself, all of these things could be called coping mechanisms and coping strategies. And we all have this need to cope. We find strategies, we navigate our way through life, you know, from birth. And we find ways to cope with our environment. So I think that would take me to looking at socioeconomic situation, because somebody that doesn't have the capacity to engage in school, for example, and get all the way through academia with good results, university or a job, you know, that's going to have an impact on the types of choices they feel are available to them. So you get more likely to be exposed to crime because you can't actually get a good job, but you still need money. You know, are you going to be able to succeed or not? What are the drivers for that? So what kind of family background do you have? You know, there's so much, but it takes me back to sort of like my experience of the young dyslexic. So excuse me, I'm not feeling very well, so if I'm coughing a bit, please excuse me. So over the years, I've worked with quite a few people that have had dyslexia, and some of the common things come up around that with young dyslexic is they know that they're different, you know, and they know it, and it's not in a good way. So, you know, is it getting picked up? Is it getting picked up in time? You know, they're always feeling stupid. They feel flawed. So this feeds some really powerfully damaging and destructive core beliefs about themselves, about what they're capable of achieving. So they start to have self-fulfilling prophecies about who they are and what they can do in life. And this becomes a massive barrier for them in terms of their engagement in life and their positive experience of it. You know, so some negative coping mechanisms can be developed from a very, very early age because of that. You know, I guess that those patterns that develop in terms of the way they see themselves and the experiences that they have when they're young because of their dyslexia, peer relationships, family relationships, sibling relationships. I mean, if there's a child in the house that's dyslexic, dyspraxic, there's probably a lot of attention needed for that child that maybe the others don't get. And sibling rivalry becomes really a big deal in that household for some. And depression and anxiety, self-harm, suicide, all of that is going on. They're always feeling sad, angry, frustrated, struggling, misunderstood. There's no effective support, you know, and these are the precursors for issues in later life. So then you get, you know, you move to the adult dyslexic, and by now they're already living in this self-fulfilled prophecy of doom and failure. You know, like I said, they probably struggle to get qualifications, so that social standing of what is expected of you once you grow up, for example, seems elusive for them. You know,
Right.
Therefore, they can end up in low paid, low skilled work, no aspirations. Their visions and dreams just seem completely unrealistic or unattainable. I mean, we're talking like, you know, worst case scenario, because and the reason why I'm saying this is because when people end up with me, they've been through so much, and these are sort of some of the core issues and the fundamental drivers. Once we start to unpick all the layers as to where it all started, what went wrong, why, these are the themes that come up over and over again. So the lack of direction, the hopelessness, the sort of giving up, antisocial behaviour, deep anxiety and insecurity, disconnection from the real world. Now, it could be argued that, yeah, okay, and I feel that. I'm not dyslexic, There's hundreds of millions of people that could argue that they have the same struggles.
Yes.
And yeah, you could be right too, or you would be right too. But I guess the difference is, Elizabeth, we can work with everybody in the same way. Okay, we can support people who unpick the onion layers, like I said, get right down to the nitty-gritty and the core of your issues and what it is that's driven you to end up where you have. And really understanding that is key.
Of course.
But the difference is, once you've done that with all the individuals that you're working with, and you've helped them to resolve all of their unresolved issues in life, they can then probably go on and recover really well and really flourish, as long as they've got all of the right support, we can talk about later. But, somebody who's living with a disability or some kind of unavoidable barrier to living is always going to have that. And that's the difference. So if you've got a dyslexic mind, which is a hindrance to your life, no amount of therapy is going to change that. So you're going to always be confronted. And I think that's the difference that I've seen. So it's really important that you find ways to work with people's perception of themselves as a dyslexic person and help them to overcome that. That's probably the biggest thing that you're going to be able to give someone.
Of course, yeah. So now, in the past, you've worked with people who have got dyslexia, and you've got examples of how substance abuse can actually, hinder one and make one sort of not be motivated enough to do things. Would you be able to give us a little bit of a background about maybe someone you worked with in the past who has got dyslexia?
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I have got something here now. Where is it? Oh, please tell me I do have it, because I'd like to read it out. Oh yeah. So I guess this kind of reads a little bit like a poem or something. What it is actually, this was me reflecting on a myriad of different people that I've worked with, and just hearing in my memory captions of things that they've shared about who they are, what they are, how they see themselves, what they've done in life as an addict. So by putting together all those excerpts, if you like, it sort of came to this, and I just want to read it.
Sure.
So, all my life, if that's all right, sorry, yeah. All my life, I felt stupid, less than, saying over and over, what is wrong with me? Hearing relentlessly, what is wrong with you? Buying into the fact that I was not normal or ever would be. So I learned to fight, to bully, lest I be bullied forever. No way, I'm not having that. I needed to be more than, so I would be the loudest, the angriest, the most fun, risque, attention grabbing, all to hide my fear, anxiety, isolation, and loneliness. Meanwhile, you could forget that I can't spell, read aloud, or at all. I can't take in information or remember your name unless we're besties. I got in trouble to hide myself. I was always ashamed. You could never see. I was always afraid. You would never ever know. My risk-taking, outrageous behaviours led to many a catastrophe: rape, addiction, prison, starting with mum chucking me out. By 12, I was drinking regularly, running away, arguing with mum. She hated me, I hated her. Drink let me off the hook because I didn't care. Crack cocaine made me invisible, so it didn't matter. But heroin took it all away, like it didn't even exist. I was finally quiet and safe in my own mind. I would never want to leave this place. So many times they left the room for me. Oh, I lost myself. Yep, I finally found my happy place in the world of drugs. I was a dominant force, a force to be reckoned with. My gift of the gab always got me paid, and I was respected for the first time, admired even. Why would I ever want to stop? Well, if I want to stay alive, I've got to. I've been raped so many times, I sell sex now. Even though I have no teeth and weigh about 6 stone, which is probably why I enjoyed my blowjobs though. I've been kidnapped, OD'd more times than I can remember, been homeless most of my adult life, and prison gave me a roof. So many times they kept a room for me. I used to laugh about that. How sad. I picked my eye till I almost blinded myself. And I'm going to die from syphilis because I can't stay still enough for treatment, amongst so many other tragic things. So these are people that their struggles with dyslexia fitting into life and feeling good enough. This is it. Right. This is where I see people.
Right. So what you just read is some of the clients you've worked with who have got severe dyslexia and obviously wasn't sort of achieving much in terms of work and so forth. Wow. Now that was a bit heartbreaking to hear that, but thank you for sharing that for us.
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm just going to move on.
There are definitely common things. Just to cap it off. There are definitely common themes in the experience and the emotional experience of people with dyslexia that come up over and over and over again once they've reached the stage of addiction and needing treatment.
Right.
So I could definitely say there's a link.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Yeah. Now let's just see who's joined us live. If our producer can let us see some comments that are coming up at the moment. We'd like to engage with our viewers. Wow, that's Kate Ann. Wow, that poem, personal statement, is so powerful. Thank you for sharing that. That's from Kat Ann. Yeah, lovely. Thank you for joining us. If there's any more messages that is coming up at the moment, that our producer will, if you can kindly share it with us so we can read it out. And engage with our viewers, because it's really important that we do that. Obviously, without them, there's no show. And we really, really want to say thank you to anybody who's joined us right now. And that poem you read have actually chills all over me, to be honest. I didn't personally
with me. You know, it's very, very moving, very, very sad.
Yeah, I mean, I have met people or come across people who may turn to a couple of drinks because of the frustration and not being able to perform with dyslexia. I've kind of met people who come across that, and it can be a very dark place to be, and that's why this topic, dyslexia and substance abuse, I thought was really interesting, because someone did, a couple of people rang and said, where's the connection in that? And I thought, well, watch the live show and you might hear where is the connection between dyslexia and substance abuse. So if our producer, if there's anybody who's dropped a message in there, we just want to say hello to everyone who's joined us right now. Please do share this live show, share it, comment. If we don't have the answer for you, well, if I don't have the answer, surely Bianca, who's an expert, who is a well-being mentor at, I can't pronounce the name of your company. Ben, you say it for me.
Benevolent Health.
That's the one. I really struggle to pronounce it. Yeah. So, of course, Bianca's got all the answers for you. If I can't answer it, she can answer it for you. Apart from my dyslexia pronunciation, I can see too many letters.
I'm not sure about that, but I'll give it a go.
Right. So that's amazing. Thank you so much for that. I'm just going to move on to my next question, please, Bianca. So what help and support is available for someone who's struggling with addiction during this time of COVID-19? What help is there, or in general, what help is there for anyone who's struggling at the moment?
You know, we are in unique times, right? For the past year, I mean, my career has completely changed because of COVID. You know, because of my personal circumstances, working in residential care was no longer a viable option for me. And initially, it was really shaky because everything had to close, and you know, organisations and agencies were just really unclear about how they were going to continue providing their service. Thankfully, I think it's a miraculous time in a way, because I believe that despite huts and everything else, actually recovery is probably more accessible than it's ever been. And I say that because the amount of online support there is now, and access to recovery online. So whereas before you would have to maybe engage in your local drug and alcohol team or recovery service within your community, and maybe have to have an assessment and then wait a period of time. Recovery online is now a really big feature, so you can still engage in that way, and there are still services operating within the COVID sort of framework at the moment. So if you're struggling and you want to access services, I guess the best thing to do would maybe go onto your local council's website, or just go into Google and Google recovery or drug and alcohol teams, DAT, DAT teams, in your local area, and that should pull up some different agencies and numbers. I think peer-led or fellowship recovery is probably the strongest it's ever been in terms of accessibility, because historically you would need to take yourself along and go through the daunting process of walking into a room full of strangers, for example, if you wanted to access AA or NA, which is Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, or any of the A sort of fellowship recovery options. And for some, that could be a deal breaker, you know, like that's really, really overwhelming and daunting. So all of the live face-to-face meetings have paused, obviously, during this time, but they've managed to set up a fantastic range of online portals now, links, Zooms, there are WhatsApp groups, you know, you find one and it's like a domino to a whole world of recovery. And now you can access meetings all over the world 24 hours a day. So it's a much grander offering than anything that was there before. Whereas before, you know, you would have to go to online where to find or access the helplines for these organisations to find out where your next meeting is going to be. And there would, I mean, London is pretty plugged in. If you're in London, guys, you know, there were hundreds of meetings every week, but not many during the day, maybe 1 or 2 lunchtime venues, the odd women with family, you know, like creches, not many. And the latest the meeting would start is maybe 9 o'clock at night. So if you were struggling through the night, for example, or early in the morning, or if you needed to fit it around work or other types of demands, that could be really difficult. Whereas now, you can be online in a meeting at any time of day or night. So that's fantastic. If AA and fellowship type appeals to you. There are smart recovery groups, which again, they've transformed into, you know, and built on their online portal. So Smart Recovery again is another self-help type of recovery, and it's peer-led again in a similar way to AA. The difference is they use science-based, sort of information-based, CBT tools type of based. So they have material which is tools and skills-based, which is available through group participation. So they're all kind of group settings. Now, the advantage of online is that if you have difficulty engaging in groups, you can go on a website, click on the link, and you can hide your camera. you can just listen or you can watch other people. There's a certain amount of safety now and protection for those people, which I think is now more inclusive actually than it was before. So that really excites me. I think it's a blessing at the moment, because if we're trying to look at the positives of COVID, I definitely think this is one.
Of course. Yeah.
And you know, you can look for recovery colleges. It is another thing. They're great places, because the types of training, especially around mental health issues and that kind of thing, there's really great recovery colleges around. Try and check out recovery hubs and see what they're doing, because recovery hubs can consist of recovery cafes, recovery theatre groups, you know, music groups, choir groups. There's all kinds of recovery hubs that maybe they're doing virtual recovery in the same way that other organisations are doing it. So yeah, I think there is a lot of support still out there actually, and like I said, it's a wonderful time in recovery, I think.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, thank you for that, Bianca. But I think a message has come from Dr. Neil. Dr. Neil's psychologist, who has actually been on our show before, and the question he's asking is, are there any specific type of substance abuse dyslexics tend to choose? So that's the question. If we can leave that question up, please, to our producer, if you can leave it up for us. So are there any specific type of substance abuse dyslexics tend to choose? I mean, the poem you wrote is obviously from somebody you'd worked with in the past, but is there a particular substance?
Yeah. Well, I think my experience is that it always starts with alcohol. And depending on the type of personality, it will veer towards crack cocaine or heroin, depending on how much trauma they feel they need to manage and escape from. Having said that, when you get someone that's high functioning, that has managed to somehow function through this all, it will prefer drugs of choice, alcohol and prescription medications, and self-medicating on legal drugs as opposed to illicit drugs, in my experience.
So the way I'm looking at it, yeah. So it looks like, you know, if somebody was going to go down that route, it's some kind of comfort to get away from what the actual problem is, isn't it? I.e., if they've got dyslexia, they thinking, look, if I can use this, then it can sort of, I don't know. I mean, you explain that to me. How do they feel after, you know, drinking alcohol or whatever it might be?
Well, for example, if you've got someone that's completely anxious, feels like they've got imposter syndrome because they're faking it to make it all the time, because they really can't do this stuff, you know, the normal stuff that we all take for granted. Because with dyslexia, you've got dyspraxia, there's all kinds of other things that dyslexia is not just about reading, which I know your guests will know that. But so, you know, somebody that feels like they don't have any control, they would prefer to take something that gives them the confidence to step out of that shadow and be something else. And drugs like cocaine will give them that, uppers will give them that energy to break out of whatever it is they feel holds them in and holds them back. Alcohol will do that as well, because it will disinhibit, and you will, you know, get some kind of bravado feeling from alcohol as well as escape. And like I said, you know, where there has been massive trauma, or even when they found the benefit in terms of their emotional need early on with heroin, that will remain the preferred drug, because it just blankets and takes away everything. They don't have to deal with the emotional, psychological aspects of trying to cope with their lives.
Right, yeah. And Dr. Neil's put another question up. He said, do they choose alcohol or drugs to feel normal, non-dyslexic? And I think you've probably answered that already.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Because it is a way, especially with socially acceptable drugs like alcohol, it is a way to feel, you know, to build with a peer relationship Like I said before in the very beginning, you know, these are comforters that get social inclusion. You can get identity from that. You know, you're not exposed. Your failings or shortcomings, or your perceived failings and shortcomings, are not going to be exposed, and you can be whatever you want to be when you have that confidence in you from the substance once you've taken it. And when people learn that early on, it's something that they're not easily let go of, to be honest. And that's where the addiction comes in the end, not because they're predisposed to having addictive personalities, but because the need, that emotional crutch, it becomes a problem down the line.
And just to let our viewers know that dyslexia is a spectrum. So obviously you might know someone who has got mild dyslexia, and then obviously somebody who's got severe dyslexia. You know, it's not like one size fits all. It's a spectrum of it. So someone who's mild and someone's got severe, where they can't engage or even recognize the alphabets A to Z. So it's, you know, we're not speaking about someone who's just struggling to maybe get a couple of sentences on paper. We're talking about from somebody who's mildly dyslexic to severe. And that you know, just for I made that clear. If there is any more comments that our viewers have put on there, if our producer can show us, and obviously we can read all that out and engage with our viewers. It's really important that we acknowledge that they're there. So if you've just joined us, we're talking about dyslexia and substance abuse. We have the lovely Bianca Simpson, who's joined us from Benin, right? Okay. Trying to say that company still.
Sorry, I missed my cue there, didn't I?
By the end of today, I probably will know how to pronounce this. Yeah, there's too many words in there too many alphabets in there for me. And of course, we're talking about dyslexia and substance abuse. And of course, Bianca's well-being mentor at the organization she works for. And if there's anything that, you know, we've mentioned here and you need support or help for, you can drop us an email at info@a2idyslexia.org.uk. You can also drop us a message. You can, you know, and then whatever, I don't have the answers for a lot of the questions that are coming up, but we can always contact Bianca to get, you know, what the right answer might be. Like Bianca said earlier, there is, you know, there's agencies you can join, there's support groups. Maybe what Bianca can do for us afterwards is give us a couple of lists of those, and we can share it with our, you know, live video when it all goes tomorrow when we start sharing it. Right, I was about to lose what I was about to say then, and that's part of my dyslexia. Sometimes I forget what I'm about to say, then I have to stop and think. So if you have joined us, welcome to A2I Dyslexia Live Show. Now, my last question, Bianca, it's not really a question, but some kind of, please can you give us 2 or 3 tips on how to break the cycle of substance abuse and addiction? How do we break the cycle?
Now, I thought about this, and I've got so many kind of nuggets for the top pocket, if you like, that it was hard for me to narrow this down really to 3. And I confess that I think I got it down to 4. But I think the main thing for me, in my experience, number 1 is support. It's not something that you can probably expect to manage long term, or even for some in the short term on your own. So I would say support is key. So, you know, you say the word support, and you start to think, well, okay, why? I think I just maybe outlined why. Statistics show, and I'm not big on statistics, you know, I'm more of a hands-on person, but statistically, you know, recovery statistics show that those that have support, socio-economical support, will tend to fare better than those that don't. So what does recovery support look like? Well, you know, I think we've spoken about some of it. So services, it could be fellowships, it could be books. There's so much stuff online now. For example, look at what we're doing today. You know, there are so many resources. But peers, family, maybe a social worker, someone that you trust. Are you a member of a church? Do you have some kind of spiritual faith? You know, is there someone somewhere where you feel that you might be able to reach out and get that support? Because my experience is because for example, if you've got one support network and you're struggling 10 times a day, every day, after like the 10th time in one day, you might not feel able to burden that person with the next 11th reach for help. So the more people you can have that you can contact, then maybe you're only contacting that person once a day, once a week, because you can rotate everyone and you don't feel like you're overburdening one particular person. So the more support you can have, develop a strong support network. Get some hobbies, because what does recovery look like? Well, obviously it's engagement in a program or your treatment, or some kind of plan to change the cycle of behavior and move on from your addiction. So hobbies, education, training, employment, and all of those things can become a focus once you've arrested the initial addiction use, perhaps. Maybe not the addiction, but the use. You've been able to arrest that use and stop that use.
So one's mental well-being is also really important, isn't it? Because it's all well and good that we go to the support groups and get all the help we need, but the mental side of things as well is really, really important to kind of go for help in that area.
So that brings exactly. So that brings me to sort of triggers and identifying your triggers. And a lot of this will be to do with your mindset, developing communication. Because how old are you emotionally? What do you know about emotional intelligence? What do you know about feelings words? Because if you don't have a grasp of these things, then it's going to be a much harder challenge for you to actually recognize how to get support, how to help yourself on a mental and emotional level, and certainly triggers around managing risk, identifying patterns and changing behaviors. Knowing about your triggers is going to really support you to be able to do this, because on a really simple level, people, places and things are massive triggers. Just going up, a rude cashier in the supermarket, or things like everyday stuff, bills or family, having to go to work, or the journey on the tube. That's a place that can be a trigger. There's all kinds of things that can be triggers, and how do you get triggered, and where does that leave you? What kinds of thought processes do you have? Because thoughts will affect your feelings, and feelings will have an impact on your behavior, and all of that is tied in with your mental well-being, for sure.
Wow.
Bianca,
this has been amazing. You've been absolutely phenomenal. Just wants to, not too sure if there's any messages there, and if there is, if our producer can let us see some of the comments that were coming up, see how best Bianca can answer that for us. Now, I just wanted to also say that obviously we're here to support you with your dyslexia and your well-being. So if there's any help that one needs in terms of how to manage your dyslexia, A2I Dyslexia is able to help with that. We currently have, sorry, I can hear some sort of background noise here. We currently have serving Lambeth residents. So if you're Black and you live in Lambeth, we have a program going at the moment that we can support you with dyslexia and all the help that you need. We've also got study skills happening at the moment. So we've been kindly funded by the London community, and we're running study skills from the age of 12 and upwards. The Lambeth program is for people who are looking for work, or who are sort of what they call inactive, looking for work and also working at the moment, and training. So I thought I'd share that as well. If you're watching this program and you've been affected in any way, or you need support or help, please do not hesitate to send us a message privately, and we'll be able to. I'm not an expert in this area. I will be 100% honest with you. If there is anything that Bianca can support us with in terms of moving forward, we'll be more than happy to hear from you. I just want to say, Bianca, that brings us to the end of the live show. Is there anything any sort of last message you want to leave?
Elizabeth, haven't even scratched the surface, like that was such a quick introduction, because there's so much more to this, and there's, even in terms of, the top tips and stuff, I think that's something that could maybe go in the future, because it's just gone so quick. But thank you for inviting me. I've really, really enjoyed being of service with you guys today, and I hope that someone that listens in gets what they need.
Thank you very much. And of course, you know, your organization is based in London, isn't it? Is it based in London? The organization you work for?
You know, it's the CEO and the business was set up in London. So yes, in terms of companies, house London, but actually we are online and around. Our services could be deployed anywhere right now. I suppose that's the beauty working. So our partnership, yeah, I'm not actually in the UK myself right now. So there you go.
Yeah, that's what makes it so lovely. I mean, we moved online, and it's like, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you know, you can access our services, some of our paid services, you know.
Yeah.
And I know COVID has done a lot of damages, but you know, some of us have kind of gone online and realized that actually there's a need for you know, global as well. But if anybody wants to sort of tap into your services, we'll have all your company details when we post the video at some point on our social media channels. And if anybody needs support or help, please do not hesitate to contact the company that Bianca worked for. Bianca, thank you so much for joining A2I Dyslexia Live Show. I want to thank all our viewers for joining us this evening, for your comments, and also for sharing and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you next week, same time, same place. Have a very good evening. Bye-bye for now.
Bye now. Bye.